Hi, welcome to this week's episode of In the Hoods. This week we're going to be talking about Murray Hill with a little bit of Tudor City in there too. Murray Hill is a neighborhood which extends from about 34th Street to the south, the East River to the east, 5th Avenue to the west, and 42nd Street to the north. Now, Murray Hill originally got its name from the Murray Farm, which existed in this area in the 1700s. And because the area is built on what's called a glacial ridge, there's a hill. It goes up and then it goes down again, hence Murray Hill. The Murrays, who were here through the Revolutionary War, were the original owners, and they have a place in history. It is said that Mrs. Murray entertained the British commander who had landed at Kips Bay and invited him over for tea to delay his invasion of Manhattan and allow George Washington time to escape. Nobody knows if this is really true or not, but it makes for a good story. But the neighborhood, this land that was the Murray's Farm and Murray Hill, the neighborhood, really began to be developed as housing for middle class and upper class families in the mid-1800s, as all part of New York moving north. Many brownstones, row houses, were built along the side streets in Murray Hill, which many of them have survived and exist through to today. And on the avenues, you had taller buildings, taller either apartment buildings built. On Park Avenue, you have many pre-war apartment buildings. Many of them now are cooperative buildings. But there was very little new construction in this area, although some, just not a lot. There is an active historic preservation society in the area to preserve it, so that developers don't rip it all down and build high-rises. And it makes it a nice kind of lower residential area. The building heights aren't huge. You have lots of light. Many of the brownstones are currently being used as consulates for countries while they're attending the UN. And part of the reason for that is that the cost of maintaining these brownstones is very high. Taxes are high and maintenance is high, and particularly because they're historic brownstones, there are certain rules which must be obeyed. The neighborhood, though, is still primarily residential and has some very historic buildings. J.P. Morgan's mansion and his adjacent museum are located on Madison Avenue and 36th Street. And this is his original house, plus his library, plus additions to make the museum. And it's really quite lovely. Also located in this area is the Church of the Incarnation, which can be found on 35th Street and Madison Avenue. It's an Episcopal church, which was built in the late 1800s. And this church houses a lot of really fine ecclesiastical art. It has a mural painted by John Lafarge, who was a famous muralist in the late 1800s. It also has stained glass windows by Tiffany and Company, plus many other windows imported from England. Also located in the area is what used to be B. Altman and Company. and its original building took up a whole block running from 34th to 35th and Madison to 5th Avenue. And this beautiful building has been preserved, and half of it was housed by a New York public library. It was the business library. It's currently closed, and I'm not sure what they're doing with the space. The other half of it is occupied by offices for the Oxford Press, but it has been preserved in its original state. No one has been allowed to develop the site, which is very important, unless we're going to all live in a cavern. So the area is really quite airy and light and full of historic buildings. As you get to 42nd Street, you get to higher rise buildings, commercial buildings, and on the south side of 42nd Street, between, I guess it's 3rd and 2nd Avenue, you have the old Daily News building, which was really a fine example of Art Deco architecture. And that has been preserved as well. Its original lobby has been preserved. From about 40th Street up to 42nd is Tudor City. Now, Tudor City is actually built on a cliff abutting the East River, and below it runs the FDR Drive. Tudor City is interesting because it was the first high-rise, middle-class housing development in the United States. At the time it was built, which was 1926 when it began, it was the largest middle-class residential development anywhere. And it is built in what's called the Tudor Gothic style. It's very interesting. They have beautiful, in the lobbies, they have beautiful ceilings and a lot of wood, and all this has been preserved. The units themselves, however, were all really quite small. And when development was built, it was really designed to house people coming to New York in efficiency type units. These kitchens that really were not kitchens at all, they were efficiencies. And apparently some of the studio apartments also came equipped with Murphy beds. So this was not luxury housing, and to this day is still quite diminutive, if you will. But it was interesting because it was so innovative. This is actually where my mother, who came to New York City in about 1936, Tudor City was the first place she lived. So that tradition has continued. And it's just another interesting neighborhood in New York City.